welcome to the Time Shifters podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Page. In studio with me today to talk about some news about the things coming out of Comic-Con, especially right on the superhero front, is Matt Flynn. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, this is awesome. You're first time podcasting.
Yes.
I've done a little podcasting off and on for a while now, so this is exciting to kind of bring back. Time Shifters existed, and then it didn't exist, so I'm trying to kind of bringing it back. I'm very happy that you're here with me to help me do that. I think it's going to be fun, and we got some great stuff to talk about. I mean, we have gone from, just in the last few years, it's actually kind of funny. While we were doing Time Shifters before, we had a little sci-fi here and there, a little sci-fi, a little bit of superhero, whatever. And then it faded about the time that it all really absolutely exploded. Yeah. Now we have got stuff coming out every year, beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year, especially on the superhero. The superhero stuff has just absolutely exploded.
Yeah, it has. And I was thinking it over, and it's amazing how in a short amount of time the superhero movie has gone from the family-friendly kids movie to you have to be a certain kind of person to want to see this to the most mainstream movies out there.
Yeah, a little bit. I guess I admit to being a little bit torn on that front, because the superhero stuff does lend itself to being family-friendly. It just naturally does. Kids want to see superhero stuff. And a lot of the superhero stuff that's been coming out, some of these films, aren't made for the kids anymore. Yeah. I mean, my gosh, we have Deadpool, which was, I'm sure there was kids crying in the... despite the fact that they kept saying, don't bring your kids. I'm guarantee you there was some parent complaining because they brought their kid. And even the Superman movies have gotten a little darker. The Batman movies are certainly gotten darker. And PG-13 is kind of like the rule now, if not going completely R. They're talking about the new doing another Wolverine that they're going to go full R.
Yep.
So what do you think about that? Does it make it? It's great for us because we're grown adults. We don't have to worry about it. But I am a family man. I have a 11-year-old son, and he sees the commercials for these things, and it's like, maybe when you're older. Right. So what are your take on what are your thoughts on having that more adult superhero movie? I
mean, like you said, for us it's great, but I work with kids and families, and I was actually just talking to a mom and her daughter the other day, and her daughter is very young, but she's really into superheroes, and her daughter was wearing a Wonder Woman t-shirt, and I said, "Are you looking forward to the movie?" And her mom just kind of gave me this look and was like, "We're not sure if she can go. We're not really and it kind of bums me out that Wonder Woman finally gets a movie, but little girls might not be able to go and see it because it skirts that line a little bit.
Right, exactly. I haven't seen what they're going to rate it. Is it going to be, have they announced a rating?
I don't think officially, but I would be shocked if it wasn't PG-13. I don't believe they'll go full R. I'm sure that would have been said a long time ago, and it's going to be too violent to be PG. Right,
yeah, good point. And with everything, just historically, as far as the X-Men films that have come out, all the Superman, they're all PG-13 at least, so... that's a very good point, because there's lots of articles about they're talking about how great it's, finally Wonder Woman, like you were saying, finally this, strong woman superhero figure. Wonder Woman's been around 75 years. Yeah. And her popularity's risen and fallen, off and on. And so it's so great that this is finally here, and and it can inspire these young girls that can't see the movie. Right. So they're still going to buy the merchandise. There'll still be plenty of merchandise for the kids, and there'll be video games or whatever. But they're not going to be able to see the actual film until they're older. Right. It's got to be. It's hard. It's hard as a parent. I ran into that with some of the X-Men films, the newer X-Men films. Which I thought were great. And most of them are just these really great. I'm thinking, okay, yeah, I could show this to my kid. This is fine. And then there comes that rule that, in a PG-13, you're allowed one F-bomb. And so they make sure to use it. And I'm thinking, but now can I show can I show this to my kid? They kind of ruined it for me. I need just that little bleep.
Right. I almost wonder if maybe one day someone will suggest, here's the PG-13 version of the movie, but maybe parents can bring their kids to the more censored version where they take out that one F-bomb, or they don't necessarily show the full, like they show the battle, but then they cut it just before the person gets cut, things like that.
I don't have so much a problem with some of the violence because it's superhero violence. It's always usually very over the top. I'm not really concerned about my kid thinking he can, fling someone through a tree or whatever. But the language thing, it's one of those things that I'm sure when I was his age, I was probably using the words. Certainly another year or two, he'll be using the words. Maybe not around me, but he'll be using the words. But you don't want to expose it to him if you don't have to. And it is just the one word, and it's that one time in these movies. And the rest of the movie, I think, is perfect for great sit down with dad and kid and watch. But that one word, it puts that little bit of doubt in your mind of like, but should I? Right. All in all, I don't have a problem with it being a little more serious tone, I guess, with the superheroes, because look, we came up with superheroes, especially on television. We didn't have superhero movies until the 70s with like Superman. Right. And then the late 80s going into the 90s we had the Batman films. But prior to that, if you wanted superheroes, it was either in the comics, it was in cartoons, or it was on television, but it was like the Adam West Batman or the 70s Linda Carter Wonder Woman. That was all very family-friendly, really dialed down for the kids. So I guess in a way I kind of like, now that I'm older, of course, I don't mind it. But it is hard with being that superheroes just naturally kids gravitate themselves to superheroes. It just makes it a little bit harder. And I think I'm probably repeating the same thing over and over.
No, that's fine, because I'll say it again, it is really hard, and even the TV show front has gotten more serious, and it's gotten a bit more graphic, and not necessarily the language, but some of the shows, they dive into relationships, and things can get sexual, and you don't necessarily want like a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old wondering what's going on. Why is Green Arrow having a shirtless scene with a woman and things like that. And
yeah, or just even some of the actual themes that they deal with. It's not just about, let's go get the bad guy. Sometimes it's a lot darker tone, a lot darker themes, and you wonder how much of that is sinking in if your kid is watching it. You haven't watched the Supergirl. I've watched Supergirl with my wife. We haven't watched it with a kid. But for the most part, I would say it could be kid-friendly for 13 and between 11 to 12, 13 and up. But occasionally there is a little bit of a darker tone, a darker theme. You're like, I wonder if they would understand that. Would it just go over their head? Or would that be like you were saying, Daddy, why? Why is that happy? Tell you when you're older, Right. It does make it a little harder.
Yeah, but then you have, since it's on a network that anyone can get access to, you've got younger kids going, Supergirl, I want to see that. Supergirl looks like fun. Well, you're 7 and Supergirl's dealing with some things that maybe you shouldn't be exposed to. And especially for little girls, they just want to see a cool female superhero. And we've kind of pulled it away from them a little bit in some ways. And it's kind of up to families to make that decision. Should they or shouldn't they? Or maybe they'll... Because now you've got all of these resources that say, in this episode we're going to deal with these themes and that themes and these kind of images. And maybe parents might say, it's not on tonight because they saw, they're dealing with something that I don't want my kid to see just yet. Going back to that one family I talked to, that mom told me she would do things like that. Like certain episodes her daughter could watch, others she couldn't. And I think that must be very frustrating.
It's got to be. Now, the other CW shows, again, I'm terrible, probably need to cut a corner off my geek card because I've been watching the other ones. Have you watched the other CW shows, the Green Arrows, the Flash, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I've been watching those pretty close to when they started, and they're all connected, and they're bringing Supergirl over to the CW, and they've already connected the Flash to her in a parallel universe kind of way, but rumors circling that they're actually going to merge the two worlds as one. So they're going to have 4 shows Monday through Thursday of I don't know the order, but it'll be Supergirl, Flash, Green Arrow, and then the Legends of Tomorrow show, all sharing one world, supposedly.
What's the theme like been on those? Have those been a little bit more probably teen and up kind of aimed?
Yeah, that's kind of the CW's MO, but these shows have just also touched an older demographic as well, for people like me in my 30s who just really love superhero things. So they kind of skirt this line of it's kind of a teen drama, but an adult can also appreciate it too. Green Arrow, the Arrow show, has been a bit more darker in tone. It deals with like just dark imagery like torture and just people being cut up and hurt and just abused in various ways. Flash is a lot more lighter. It's funnier. And it ended up being more popular than Arrow, like right from the jump, and they didn't expect that. And as a result, they tried to lighten up Arrow. And from my point of view, it kind of backfired a little bit. And from what I understand, they're going to kind of go back to basics for this next season coming up.
Well, I think maybe just timing as far as when you air your shows then. If you're going to have The Flash and it's going to be a lighter, well, that one can air at 8. And then maybe if you want to take the next show is maybe it's a little darker, so maybe that one can come on at 9. And then you get something like Arrow, like that's going to be your 10 o'clock show. Get it out of the prime time and get it to where the adults, the older audience is going to see it. But I'm sure they're going to scatter these things probably throughout the week. So I don't know if it's not going to be like the old at 7 and at 8 and at 9
right.
on one day. So you're not going to have the superhero day.
Right. They're doing each of them one day a week, so you kind of go one into the other each day of the week.
Oh, interesting. Well, I tell you, it's just boggles my mind that we have a network that's going to have 4 superhero shows on throughout the week. It just amazes me.
Yeah, they've built their own Justice League without actually making a Justice League. And if you were to say that even 5 years ago, no one would believe you that would happen.
Yeah, that would be just, you'd be looking at the death knell of a small network.
Right.
Yeah, if they would try something like that. That's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And I'm thrilled. And hopefully, for as long as the momentum lasts, keep going. And maybe the problem is what happens is it gets to a saturation point, and then you get another network or another studio that wants to try it, and they just push it that one step too far, and they come up with something a little less quality, and it becomes really almost like a joke, and so it sort of almost pulls down the others with it. We saw it not with superheroes, but with like science fiction back in the 80s. Next Generation, Star Trek Next Generation came out, turned out to be really popular through the 80s. And so everyone's like, oh, let's start doing a sci-fi thing. And so we ended up with Babylon 5, which I really enjoyed. A lot of people, the point can be argued whether it was good. Right. But I really liked it. But then you also had things that they would try, like, let's try, what was the one that was like Space Cops or something. And it was things like that. And then you had a lot of cheesy stuff coming out on some of the smaller networks that were just trying to get their foothold on it. And it ended up, I think, kind of pulling the whole thing down to where, once again, all you had was a Star Trek. That's all you had. That if I can talk, that's all you had left again was Star Trek.
Right, and you're already starting to see things like that. There's this one show, I'm fairly certain it's called Powerless, that's coming out this fall, and it's a DC property, and the idea of it's an insurance company that's providing insurance to regular people for all of the death and destruction that are being caused by superheroes. And it's going to be a comedy through and through. And so I'm sitting there going, on one hand, that sounds really interesting. That could be really good.
Yeah, it could be fun.
But if they don't pull it off, it's what you're saying. It's that oversaturation, and it could pull everything down. And so right now it's kind of up in the air. It can go either way. I think right now, at least in terms of like the DC properties and the Marvel properties, they're pushing each other because DC started out with Arrow, and then Marvel started out with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and they were two very different shows tonally. But then the lightness, I feel, of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. kind of pushed DC to make Flash, and then the darkness of Arrow pushed Marvel to make Daredevil. And I think both of those are better than their previous shows. And they're just pushing each other and pushing each other. And so now you've got CW with their mini Justice League going on, and then you've got Marvel working on the Defenders now, that's mind-boggling. Most people I didn't even know what the Defenders was until these Netflix shows started.
Yeah, no, hadn't heard about it.
Right. So now everyone's going to know what it is. And so far they've been excellent. They've been some of the best shows I've watched in the last few years in terms of Daredevil and Jessica Jones. I look forward to Luke Cage. I look forward to Iron Fist, even though I'd never heard of these characters before. But that's what's up in the air right now. But right behind it is that oversaturation that could tear it all down.
And it's a matter of, maybe it's going to be a matter of the quality, like you were saying, the quality of what they bring. I mean, they are dipping into some of the more minor, what would be considered the minor characters of both the universes. So you're digging up the Blue Beetles, the Iron Cage, jumping back and forth between the properties and everything. They're all doing it. And so, yeah, if any of them, if the quality just isn't up there, if that's what's gonna start hurting it. But if they can maintain the quality of the shows, if they can carry the quality from one show to the other, whether it's Superman or if it's Luke Cage, maybe it'll have a little bit more staying power.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's also a benefit to kind of using those lesser known characters because you don't have everyone weighing in. I mean, I first heard about Jessica Jones when the show aired, and I was like, I know nothing of this character, let me watch, and I was blown away. Whereas if you make a Batman show, I'm going to have an opinion before the first episode airs, and I can't help it. And I think that goes for a lot of people, and they expect certain things, whereas if you don't know anything about this character, you go in as a blank slate, and you're pleasantly surprised.
And these studios aren't going to be held down by so much weight in history. Yeah. Where with Batman, I mean, while you can change it a little bit, there's a certain very concrete origin to Batman. Same with Superman or even Wonder Woman. And yes, you can tweak it a little bit back and forth, but you still have to stick with that. Where you get something like a Luke Cage or an Iron Fist, maybe the same way. You want to try to homage the comics and say, okay, this is how he came to be. But I think you have a little bit more leeway to do a little bit larger tweaks, because you don't have such a huge amount of past history with the characters.
And it's kind of what I look forward to, though, are those characters. Because when I heard that they're toying with the idea, with DC's toying with the idea of doing a Booster Gold, Blue Beetle buddy cop movie, I jumped up and down. Because I do know those characters, even though they're not even like B or C level. They're D level. They're like, if those guys show up in the Justice League, there's trouble. Because that means Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman got taken out. If those guys are left, then the bad guys are probably going to win. But they can be really funny. They're not necessarily about saving the day. They're more of about just being two goofballs who happen to be superheroes. So those are characters that I look forward to. So when I hear that, both sides are kind of digging into those lesser known characters, I'm probably more excited for that than the stuff that we've already seen 20 different.
Well, and maybe it is too, because one of the things I hate is whenever they do, and maybe they're finally learning their lesson, whenever they introduce a new actor to play a character, Spider-Man, Batman, it's like, oh, and let's retell the story again. And I'm like, oh God, another origin. I know how Spider-Man got his powers. You don't need that anymore. And with these minor characters, I don't know the history, so I'm curious to know the history, and that might draw me in because I don't know so much about the characters already.
Yeah, and the origin story for superheroes is kind of a movie that people are over. And I know when they were like starting Spider-Man again, they were like, please don't do another origin story. And when they were putting Batman into the new DC cinematic universe, and even though it was just a quick couple of minutes to open the movie of how Bruce's parents die, everyone rolled their eyes again, even though it didn't take up a big part of the movie, but it was still there. And so when these new characters come along and we do another origin superhero movie, you kind of forget that's what you're seeing, because you're just sort of like, I want to learn. And you almost trick yourself into thinking the origin movie is a good thing again.
But I think, let's go ahead and kick off with some of the stuff that's come out of the Comic-Con. And let's start with that's some of the stuff, some of the things that have come out. Iron Fist, Luke Cage, Marvel's Defenders all got little, anything from a little tease to an actual trailer to the upcoming Netflix series. No release dates have been set for either three, as far as I know. Defenders, yeah, it's going to have Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Daredevil, and Iron Fist all together. So what did you think about Iron Fist, and I think actually had a trailer that came out.
Yes.
Yeah. Like you're saying, I mean, are you interested? You didn't know anything about the character. I didn't know anything much about it, other than I'm sure I saw his comic on a shelf somewhere.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I had heard about it. I think I probably first heard about his character in a video game, but I never know anything about it. I looked into who the character was when they first announced that they were going to do the Defenders, which I think happened around the time they announced Jessica Jones. And so I just decided to go read up on it. I was like, this is a really interesting character. And then I was more interested in the fact that these characters do exist in the movie universe. And I wonder, will they bring everyone together? Will they have like 30 superheroes standing on screen at once? And that's something that I think would be interesting, but a massive undertaking. Just to make 4 TV shows and then say we're going to do one super show is a massive undertaking.
Yeah, and it's going to be a logistics nightmare for the studio, for the actors, for everyone involved, and be able to pull it off. But like I said, DC has done. Actually, those are Marvels, aren't they? Those are Marvels.
Those are Marvels.
That's going to be interesting to see. Both DC and Marvel have had highlights and lowlights between TV and film. One seems to really. DC certainly seems to really kind of have the TV thing locked down. Yeah. Marvel's got the movie thing locked down. Yeah. So it'll be interesting. And maybe being on Netflix, maybe it'll give them a little bit more freedom to kind of do it more film-like versus TV-like.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I have felt when I've watched Daredevil and Jessica Jones. I go, these are high-quality TV shows. Like, the Daredevil costume is fantastic. I mean, it's very movie-like, and the lighting is very movie-like, and, you get an actor like Vincent D'Onofrio to play the Kingpin, and right there is a great movie actor,
right.
And he brings such a level to that character that, one, you kind of feel for him a little bit, but when he goes full psychopath, you're kind of cheering him on because you've bought into everything he's brought into that character. So it's very movie-like, but because they're also an hour apiece, you're kind of seeing mini movies telling this one very well thought out arc. That's what I saw in the first season of Daredevil. In the second season, that's what I saw in Jessica Jones. And it makes me wonder what that arc will be when they finally come together as the Defenders. Because so far they haven't had an excuse to come together. They teased it. They almost did it at in the last episode of Jessica Jones, where they meet the what's the actress's name? Rosario Dawson. They meet her character, and she was very prominent in Daredevil. And she goes, "Do you want me? I have a friend who can help you. Do you want me to call him?" And I'm sure a lot of other people jumped and was like, "Is this it? Is this going to happen?" And it didn't. And you're like, "Okay, tease, major tease." But that's just sort of their way of like kind of nudging you, going like, "Don't worry, soon it will happen," and you want it to happen. But again, you just sit there and go, "How?" And that's what I'm interested in. And because they're not characters that I'm invested in terms of like an historical point of view, I'm open to anything.
I think I like the idea too, and maybe this is some of the attraction to them, is they're a little bit more, as far as the what's at stake is a little, I don't want to say it's a little lower, but it's not like the Avengers where they're, fighting to save the world in every film or anything. It's a little bit more, you're going against the Kingpin. It's a little bit more vigilante justice sort of thing. You think that's a little bit, it makes it an attractive property, just the fact that it's sort of more quote-unquote real world?
Yeah, I think it does, because I think the problems they're dealing with are very real world, even though Matt Murdock has this incredible sense of smell, and even though he's blind, he can still see in a way. Those things aren't real, but what he's dealing with, it's just corruption on the streets, and that's what he's combating. Everyone can relate to that. Jessica Jones, even though she is incredibly strong, has a certain level of invulnerability, and she can't quite fly yet, but she's jumping ridiculous distances, and she's dealing with a guy who has a form of mind control. But at the core of it, that story is about a person facing their abuser. Incredibly like when I realized that's what the show was about, I was blown away and I was floored. And you see how scared her character is because she's going up against the guy who abused her for months on end. And it's about facing that and dealing with that and realizing I can be scared, but I can still stand up to you. I mean, I wish the movies were more like that, because the movies are about a robot's taking over and we got to stop them. I'm not going to relate to that. But there's a guy over there who was your tormentor for several months, and you have to face him, and that's not an easy challenge. So many people can relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be really interesting, and I think that we are kind of seeing with Netflix, with the studios going to things like Hulu and Netflix and Amazon, I think you're going to see that's really laying the groundwork to the history of television. The networks should be looking at this and worrying, honestly.
Oh, I agree. I think well within our lifetime, we're going to see TV become something completely different. I think streaming services are going to be what TV is. Like, if you don't have a smart TV by a certain point or a box that can stream, you're not going to have television. Gone will be the days of you just plug your TV in. I know everything's like turning digital now and you got to get a certain kind of box, but I think even that box will be outdated and you won't be able to just pick up your remote and flip through the channels. You're going to have to subscribe to a channel. You're going to have to stream a channel. And that's what television's going to be. And you're already kind of seeing things make that shift. You're seeing HBO get rid of, you have to have a cable package to get HBO Go. Now you can just go and buy HBO Now and you can watch like that. I heard something earlier this year that CW's toying with the idea of starting their own full-service streaming program. And you're going to see other companies do that just to try to keep their head above water.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to actually stop you there because that's probably a topic for another show.
Yes,
I just realized, boy, I shouldn't have even mentioned it because that's a whole nother rabbit trail that we're going to go down. Let's get back into the superhero stuff with Comic-Con. We of course saw just a little tease with Spider-Man. Some news came out about the new Spider-Man film. He's going to be facing the Vulture, which is I think people have been looking for that villain to show up in a Spider-Man film. They teased it a couple times. So that's going to be interesting. No real details about what Vulture. Apparently, the Vulture was apparently the second villain Spider-Man faced in the comics, and so since then he's gone through lots of different iterations. So, rumor has it that he's going to kind of go back to sort of the one of the earlier incarnations, if not the first one. So that's going to be interesting to see. They just saw kind of just a tease photo and news, but I think that's kind of exciting. Again, it doesn't sound like they're going to do an origin for Spider-Man. Hopefully. I mean, it is going to be a new actor. Tom Holland is playing Spider-Man now. He made his appearance in the Captain America film.
Yep.
So hopefully it is just going to be okay. He's got his powers. We already know about it. Maybe we'll get, like you were talking about the Batman, maybe a brief flashback, or he'll confide in somebody. It's like, oh, well, I was this and now I can do this. So hopefully it's not going to be an entire film about him learning how to be Spider-Man. It's just going to be him dealing with being Spider-Man and fighting the Vulture. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm a Spider-Man fan. I've enjoyed the Spider-Man. Well, I haven't enjoyed all the Spider-Man films, but I like the character of Spider-Man, and so I hope I'm hopeful that this next film will be kind of taking it back to a Spider-Man that I can say I enjoy again.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are, and the part that makes me look forward to it the most is they have said we want to keep him in high school as long as possible, because the first Sam Raimi movie got him out of high school within the first half of the movie, and the Amazing Spider-Man movie, he was in high school the first movie, and then he graduated at the start of the second. And to me, that's the most interesting version of Peter Parker, is he's a kid. He's Spider-Man, but he's a boy going to high school. And he's taking on this responsibility for no reason other than he's a good person. And to talk about the Vulture, I feel there's almost two reasons they're doing that. One, it's a character people want to see. And two, the other movies have kind of overused they did how many versions of a Green Goblin, right? There was Willem Dafoe, there was James Franco, and then they did it again in Amazing Spider-Man 2. So it's like, well, we've used that kind of villain 3 times in 2 movies or 2 franchises. And so let's put that one to the side, and maybe we shouldn't talk about the Osborns for a little bit just because people are tired of it. And so I think you're going to see other villains that just haven't been used before because they want to do something a little bit more original in terms of what's on screen. I think you'll see like the Shocker. You might see Mysterio.
That would be neat.
Yeah.
Mysterio would be really neat, especially today with today's technology. The whole idea that he can do the illusions and throw up the weird worlds and the virtual reality. Oh my God, that
Right.
Try to deal with fighting when you don't even know what the world, what are the rules in this world? Right. There are none. I mean, that would be awesome.
Right, and then you think it, and Peter Parker is a high school kid, and they've already shown that he's got a near genius level IQ in Captain America: Civil War. So maybe it's something that he'll have a leg up on. It's like, oh, you're doing something very, you're altering reality. It's like, well, I live on my phone. I'm dealing with that all the time. Like, right. Maybe, because no one's brought that character kind of into the modern world yet, at least not in terms of like a mainstream media. So that would be a very interesting character to see. So I think you'll see them kind of skip over Dr. Octopus. If they go into Venom, I think they'll save him for like down the road because people were very disappointed with that. So you'll see those other characters, not just that people want, but because they're like, well, we're going to do something that hasn't been done on the screen yet.
I love the idea of them going back to what Stan Lee originally envisioned Spider-Man to be. That teenager in high school. I mean, that was the whole point. Right. I mean, he had to sell hard to get that character to even to get that character in the comics because the powers that be went, are you kidding? He's a kid. He can't have a superhero that's a kid. He's got to be, like an adult, and everyone's got to look up to him. And Stan Lee, no. There's good stories here. And yes, absolutely, get some good stories and tell those stories in that universe. I think that's going to be a phenomenal time.
Yeah, and I've read that that's what they want to do. They want like the first movie to be a certain year of high school, and the next movie is another year of high school, and the third movie is senior year of high school. Like I think they said they want to start him off as like a sophomore, and I'm just like, that's great. That makes him what?
Oh, it's yeah, I love it. It's like, okay, I got to save New York, and then I got to get back in time to take my SATs.
Right, exactly.
It's fantastic.
And then he's also wrestling with like, okay, my uncle died, I live with my aunt, and
I got this crush on the girl next door.
Right. He's just dealing with things that everyone can relate to. And oh, by the way, he's got to swing across the rooftops and battle some psychopath who's 35 years old who thinks he's fighting another guy.
Right.
But he's really fighting a child.
All the things that come out of comic, I'm amazed at how far down the road these things are actually. We're not going to see Spider-Man until 2017, which, I mean, I guess now we're halfway through 2016, but still, it just seems like so long. Yeah, so long to wait. Including, but one we don't have long to wait at the time of this recording is Suicide Squad. They had the big trailer for Suicide Squad. That seems to be what's a lot of people are excited over. What are your thoughts on it? It's an interesting take on some of the characters. I think the Joker and the Harley Quinn is definitely a Joker and a Harley Quinn that no one has ever seen before that I know of. It should be interesting. I mean, it is definitely talk about an anti-hero movie. I mean, it's about a team of villains who are forced into being the heroes. I don't know. I'm kind of looking forward to seeing it, but I admit I'm a little standoffish, I guess, because it's just so different than everything else we've seen.
Yeah, I feel that certain movies that have come out recently have allowed it to come out. I feel Guardians of the Galaxy you have to look at and be like, the success of that movie has allowed Suicide Squad to be made and will allow other movies like it to be made because one, Guardians of the Galaxy was so deep in the bucket for Marvel.
Yeah,
it was so different because that almost is kind of like it's a bunch of villains who are doing something good. Like Star-Lord's not a good guy; he's a space pirate, and Rocket and Groot are bounty hunters, and so you're just looking at Drax just wants to rip everyone's head off. So you put all of them together, and what's the is it Gamora?
Gamora,
and she's she's raised by Thanos. Like, she's not a good person, but they save the day. And so a movie like that does a good job. And then you're like, well, you know what? Let's have Harley Quinn and Deadshot and Killer Croc get together and do something good for the wrong reasons.
Right.
And what I'm most looking forward to is Harley Quinn, just because that's a character that people really like. But it's a character that, in a short amount of time, because she was created in the 90s, has gone through a lot of changes and transitions. Like, in the 90s, she was just Joker's girlfriend in the animated series. And then they kind of went into her past, and they did that great episode on the show called Mad Love, when you see how Harleen Quinzel became Harley Quinn, and it was kind of an abusive thing. And then in the comics, they've changed her a little bit, where they've kind of turned her into like some people call her a feminist icon. Some people argue against that point. I'm sort of in between, where I'm just like, well, she's both. And, you know, some people just look at her as a sex icon. I look at her as someone who can be all of those things all at once. She can be sexy, she can be funny, she can be a feminist icon, she can beat a person up, she can flirt with them, she can save the day, or she could walk away. She could burn a building, or she could save the building. It's kind of all, she's a lot like the Joker, and it's like, well, what's funnier? Right. But she doesn't necessarily go as far as him. She's kind of more doing things of, well, what would he think? At least that's how I've always interpreted the character. But I just want to know what their take on the character would be, because I really look forward to that.
Yeah, I'm curious to see, because you've got this group of villains who are being forced to, you know, be the Suicide Squad because they're expendable is the idea, and it's going to be interesting to see. Like in you mentioned Guardians of the Galaxy. Yes, they're all bad, essentially bad people that end up saving the day, but you have all these people sort of finding out that good is better kind of thing in Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't know that they can do that with Suicide Squad. You know, can you really have all these people going, oh, well, I guess, you know, well, you can't, because it's the Joker, and it's, right. You know, you can't have them, you know, turning over a new leaf just because they've been forced to do this. So you can't have them find the right path. So that is actually an aspect of the story that I'm interested in seeing, is how far can they push the fact that these are still bad people? Yeah,
and I wasn't sure if they were going to do it, but part of what makes the Suicide Squad, what forces them to do the things they do, at least in terms of the comics and the history behind it, is they get a chip implanted in the base of their neck that if they don't do what they're told, the chip will explode and they'll die. And I wasn't sure if they were going to do that in the movie, but in the last trailer, you see a part where they're all getting an injection into their neck, and I'm like, oh, it looks like they're going to do it. So you're going to have, I wouldn't doubt if you'll see one of those characters go, oh, screw this, I'm going to go do what I want, and boom, he's dead. And just to like make the audience go, whoa, they're serious. And to make the characters go, whoa, they're serious, and now we have to do this. And
you wonder if there's going to be a sort of an extra, or if they really going to take out one of them, you know, as Killer Croc, or I mean, who's going to go? But I think you're right.
Yeah, I think you're going to see someone that they're probably going to make look cool or interesting, and then that guy's going down fast, and you're just going to be like, I was into that. What happened? I thought he was going to do something. It's like, no, we blew up his head. Keep going.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. It's going to be very interesting to see. Speaking of interesting, and virtual reality, and where physics don't apply, let's talk about Doctor Strange. Maybe, you know, when I heard that they cast Benedict Cumberbatch, I'm like, oh, another film with Benedict Cumberbatch, because, you know, who else are you going to cast? This may be a role he was made for. What I've seen so far has sold me, I think, on his Doctor Strange. And Doctor Strange is another character where I knew some of, but not a lot of. Seen him a little bit in like some of the animated. Never really read any of the books or anything. There was a very not good 70s attempt to bring him to the screen. And there was a knockoff film in the 90s that was not called Doctor Strange, but it was obviously kind of take off Doctor Strange. I think it was called like Dr. Mordred or something. Well, Charlie Band and Full Moon put that out. But no, this film looks really mind-bending. It gave me made me think of Inception. Yeah. Actually, watching the trailer, it was like take superheroes and drop them in Inception.
That's what I thought too, especially with like the city bending and reality changing. But then you realize he's not in a dream. This is happening to reality. And it makes me wonder, like, in terms of that world, is everyone in the world aware that reality's changing, or is only people who can use the mystic arts aware that it's happening? Like, what are the long-term effects on that universe going to be? And again, it's one of those things where I'm just like, I'm interested in the origin because I don't know much about him either.
Yeah. This one is an origin story,
Right.
but I think this one you have to have.
Right. That's just, I think it's just a little too unique for what they've created so far. They haven't done magic really at all in the Marvel Universe. So to bring that in, because it's been a very science-based universe, and now you're going to turn all of that on its head. And it seems from the trailer quite literally.
Yeah, no kidding. No, it looks really good. It looks beautiful to look at. It's just, it's going to be one of those movies where, because it's an origin story, which naturally kind of weighs a story down, or it can weigh a story down. Hopefully, because hopefully it's an interesting origin story, and it's all comes down. Every one of these things, it seems, it comes down to the writing. It comes down to, can they keep me interested while they're doing all the exposition that needs to be done? And yeah, then is it going to be, and how much of that is going to be origin, and how much of it is actually going to be, what you see at the end? Is it the last 30 minutes of the film, this nonstop action, and all up to that is just, how do I learn to do this? Well, we haven't seen enough to know, I guess.
Because does that come out this year?
Yeah, November.
So I was a little surprised that they actually held back in a way. Like, they just sort of showed interesting action moments. I thought we'd get a little bit more plot. Because I saw who's playing the villain. I want to say I'm saying his name right. Mads Mikkelsen, I think that's how you say his name. Okay. He probably most famous for playing Hannibal Lecter in the Hannibal show. But I don't even know what that character's called. I don't know what he's about. Is he someone who studied with where Stephen Strange is going, and then he kind of like went off the reservation a little bit? Is it kind of like semi-Star Wars of like a Jedi Sith kind of deal? Or is this just some evil warlock who has shown up? I'd like to know more, so that's probably what's pulling me in, because I actually like when trailers give you less. They just sort of show you a tone. And those have always been the movies that I look forward to the most. And then you go in, you have no idea what you're going to see, and you get surprised.
Exactly, yeah. Just give me enough to get me interested and in the seat, and then wow me.
All right, and this trailer has done that.
Yeah, I've been pulled into some pretty bad movies with some really great trailers. So I'd rather have just a trailer that leaves me going, huh.
Right.
Another big one, but again, not until got a whole nother year after Strange, Justice League, the big Justice League film, the film that I will go on record as saying that I didn't think would ever happen.
No, I didn't either. Even when they started Man of Steel, I was like, well, this is just going to be a Superman movie, right? And there were rumors that they were going to go into a greater universe, and I was like, really? And then they do it. I always thought Justice League would be better on TV. But to make it and to do it, I think, again, we go back into that's a huge undertaking. I kind of am interested in how they're kind of doing it backwards. We're going to show you all of these characters in the league first, and then we'll go into their individual movies, rather than introduce each person in a movie and then bring them together. Because we're going to see Flash really for the first time in this movie. We're going to see Cyborg for the first time in this movie. We're going to see Aquaman for the first time in this movie. We've gotten a taste of Wonder Woman. She's going to have her origin movie come out next year. But that's set before Batman versus Superman. So that'll be a version of her character that will then have to change to become what she is in Batman v Superman, because she's a lot more jaded in Batman v Superman, whereas her trailer made it seem like she's more hopeful. So it's like, well, so what is she in Justice League? Is Hope come back, or is she still jaded? And then when you're sitting next to Batman and you say a character's jaded, you're like, they must be really jaded. So all of that interests me. And then you wonder, because Superman's coming back. How is he coming back? Is that weird dream vision Batman had in Batman v Superman. Is that going to come true? Is Superman the villain? Is he going to be mind controlled? Is his coming
He was
back?
absent from the trailer. Superman was absent from the trailer that they showed.
Exactly,
yeah.
but you know he's going to be in it. So is it going to be like a Mark Hamill in The Force Awakens? He's just in the last 10 seconds of the movie, or is he going to have a prominent role? Because they showed him in the picture, standing next to the other 5. But what's his role in this movie? No mention, no nothing. I mean, no, they're still filming it, so they just showed us what they had shot.
Right.
But, so, what's going on? I know what's bringing them together. It's Batman, who had his dream, and he knows a threat's coming, and they want to figure out what a mother box is. But what is it that they're investigating? We see that shot where it looks like they're in a sewer. It's like, what's brought them to a sewer? Like, what's going on? So it's one of those trailers where it's like, you gave me a taste, you showed me a tone, I'm interested in
now
more.
I'm interested. Right? Yeah, exactly.
But because it's a year away, we're going to get more, and I really just want them to keep doing that. Just a taste, just a taste. Don't show Superman. We know he's going to be in it. Don't show him. Don't show the villain. Just kind of show a tone. That's what I want them to keep
Leave
doing.
a mystery, so when I'm sitting in the theater and watching, I'm actually going, that's what's going to happen. Right, yeah.
And movies don't really do that much anymore. Some do, some don't.
That's one of the things that worries me when things come out this soon, where you have a whole year to go, where it's like, well, why didn't you wait until next year's Comic-Con?
Yeah.
Because, there's so much time for stuff to come out. Comic-Con themselves have learned a little bit that, whatever they show is going to get leaked. Yeah. So they stopped even trying this year. They premiered it, but they premiered it by putting it on their YouTube page.
Yeah.
And so it was like, it was just out there. So studios, whatever, just going to be so much stuff. There's so much time for things to come out that you have to now sort of balance yourself between, okay, we revealed something. Well, we can't just not talk about it for another year. Because then people are going to lose interest and forget that that it's going to happen. Right. So you have to keep sprinkling little bits, and if you sprinkle too much, now I'm not as interested because I feel like I've watched the entire film because you've put out 6 trailers.
Yeah. And I feel that's something that Batman v Superman suffered from, because when I finally went and saw it, I was like, oh, I've seen so many of the major plot points, and it's more of just okay, I know they're going to fight. Tell me why. Oh, that's why. Oh, I know this is going to happen. Tell me. I feel Avengers Age of Ultron did that, like with the fight between Iron Man and the Hulk. I wish they never told anyone about that. I wish that was not in a trailer. I wish that wasn't released, because I'm just sitting there going, well, what's the reason they're going to fight? Right. And then it happened, and I think, because if you went into that movie and you had no idea, and you see Iron Man come down in the Hulkbuster, your eyes would have bugged out of your head.
Yeah.
This is amazing. I can't believe they're doing this. Then the fight happens. And then instead you're just sort of sitting there waiting. When's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? Oh, here it is. Good. And it's less thrilling that way.
Have a bad habit of either giving away what would have been the best scene of the movie or the best line of the movie or one of the funniest lines. I step back to like the Doctor Strange. If you watch the trailer, they say, oh, coming, blah, blah, blah. And then they have that little bit. And the guy pants it with like, oh, what is this, some magic incantation? No, it's the Wi-Fi password. Yeah, like why put that? Yeah, it's cute and everything, but how fun would that have been if that was in the movie, not in the trailer? You didn't know it was coming.
Right.
That would have been hysterical.
Right, and it also didn't flow with the tone of the trailer. The trailer was very serious. It was very mind warpy, and it was they weren't trying to be funny. They were trying to just show you this serious hero. And then they end it on a joke. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's like that is sticking out like a sore thumb right now. It was good. It was funny.
Yeah, now I'm having a hard time figuring out what the tone of this film's going to be.
Right. And their movies have never really been complete comedies, but they've always been funny. So we know going in that there's going to be some comedy. But to end the trailer on it, it's a little weird.
I'm looking forward to Justice League. I'm looking forward. I saw something on... I was at Facebook or online somewhere that November 2017 is when all the Aquaman is useless jokes end, with shots of Jason Momoa, as Aquaman. Right. It's going to be really interesting to see, what they do with him. I mean, that is a character that I think can be interesting. He's been portrayed a lot more interesting in like some of the animated series. And I've never read any of the books, but I've heard that there's been some really incredible stories within the actual comics. So it'll be really neat to see him as this tough guy.
Yeah, to me, he's always been a tough guy, but more, he's always been a king. And to me, that's what I hope they show, because so far they just showed him as a tough guy. He looks like he has a quick temper. Bruce Wayne's just asking a question, he throws him against the wall, and then on the next shot, we see him walking, taking a drink, and then he hops back into the ocean. And I'm sitting there going, so does Aquaman know about Atlantis yet? Does he know? Because there's a part, depending on what part of the very long comic history you want to look into, there was a part where Arthur Curry had no idea he was king of Atlantis, and he discovers it later. So is this the part of the character where he knows that, or doesn't he? Was he just kind of visiting the village where he grew up to make sure everybody had enough fish to eat, or and is he heading back to to be king, or does he not know he's king yet? But to being king is the version I like the most, where he's like, I'm not a hero. I'm here to represent my nation. Right. And that nation is most of the planet. So you all work for me. That's the version I like of, he's arrogant, but with a reason. Right. He's like, I run most of the world. I run 70% of it. And you're on my turf. And so I'm the best representative for the planet Earth. And that's the version I hope we get to see.
I hope we get to see. I don't remember the story. I'm almost positive it was in a comic, and it was some big threat was and so the Justice League, they're trying to get people together, and they go down and visit Aquaman. They go visit him, and he's king of Atlantis, and they're asking him. He's like, "This isn't my problem. It's not my fight." It's like that. That's unless they threaten Atlantis, I'm not concerned. And that's the end. I mean, it was like 2 panels in a comic, and that was all you see him, because he was like, it's just not my issue. You deal with it.
Right. Just like how somebody rules a country. Like, that's your problem. Don't bring it to my border. Right. And I hope they show that, because it seemed like that was it. Bruce Wayne showing up saying, I want help, and he throws him against the wall, and it looked like he walked away. And they even said, did he say yes or no? He said no. It's like, it's not his problem. It looks like it'll become his problem. And then there's the other part about Aquaman, is that he is much stronger than people know. He's a lot more powerful than people know. One of my favorite moments in a comic is there's this big threat. They're not sure how they're going to deal with it. And then he shows up and he's like, I don't just talk to fish. I communicate with all sea life. And then he's like, all sea life, and the Kraken comes out of the ocean. And it's just sort of like, that's what he can bring. And I don't know if they'll go that way, at least in terms of right away, but they could do something on that scale. It's like, because there was a part in it's how the trailer ended, like, Arthur Curry, I hear you talk to fish. And it's like, no, I can bring sharks, I can bring, the giant squid if I want, I can bring, there's stuff in the ocean that we don't know about. He knows about it, and he can bring it. So that's a side of the character that I would love to see.
I think the only thing I'm worried about in that film is, it's something you mentioned too, is because they're kind of doing reverse order, whereas a lot of the Marvel films everybody had their own film, more or less. The main characters anyway had their own films, had their origins films, and then they brought them together for the Avengers film. And other than Wonder Woman, where, like you said, we're actually going to see her the summer of next year, I believe, is when her film comes out. And we've already seen the Batman. We've already seen the Superman. As they're bringing in Cyborg and Aquaman. And I'm curious to see, are we going to get, again, with the origin, getting kind of weighed down with having to explain where these people come from and what they're doing? Or is it just going to be, no, it's Aquaman, yeah, he's, king of the sea, and move on? Yeah, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think you will see a little bit of explaining who they are.
Especially the Cyborg character, I would think.
Yeah. I mean, they touched on all of them in Batman v Superman. It was, in my opinion, it was kind of shoehorned in, but I think that was their way of trying to make Justice League go faster. I think they will explain it. I think you will see certain things. I just don't think it'll be a huge chunk of the movie. I think you'll get a scene a piece.
I think you probably saw most of what you're going to see with Flash, would be my guess. Bruce Wayne goes and shows up and says, "Oh, you're fast," and maybe you'll get so how'd this happen? Struck by lightning, and then I could run fast. And maybe that's all. And that's all you need.
Right. You don't need to and with the show out, people understand it's a different character, but people understand this is where the Flash came from. let's just move past it.
If you're curious, you can go look.
Right.
As soon as you leave that theater, if you don't understand, well, why can that person do that? You get out your phone.
Right.
Boom, 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 click, click, click. Oh, that's why he can do it.
Yeah.
The information is out there for people. You don't have to give it to them. They can seek it out very easily now. You don't have to go to the comic book shop.
Right.
The internet is your friend. Embrace it.
Exactly.
And so, we mentioned Wonder Woman, the big Wonder Woman trailer. This one looks really cool. I'm excited about this one. I'm excited the fact that they're putting it, back into the World War II, World War One. That I think is exciting. The fact that they're not going to change it up. They're not going to bring it into the modern world right away.
Yeah.
I think that's really exciting and looks just incredible. And it gives, Wonder Woman, the scenes, they really focus on Wonder Woman and what she can do with with the magic lasso, with the shields. It looks incredible.
Yeah, the thing of that trailer that jumped out to me instantly was the color. You get that first shot with the ocean, and it was so blue, and it was so rich. And the previous two movies have been very dark and just really, like, so many filters have been put over those movies. This just looks like they put a filter to brighten it up. And she's a very bright and positive and hopeful character. And they're advertising it right now as she's a person that, shows compassion and shows love, and she's willing to forgive. And this trailer is really showing that, she's got a war to fight, but if you are willing to talk, she's going to talk. She's not going to, kill you for the hell of it. And just seeing that shot of how bright her lasso is and how bright the water is and the color of her costume. It's brighter in this movie than it was in the last one. And maybe they could say, well, it's faded over the last 100 years. Right. But it's elements of that they haven't done in these DC movies yet. That's what really jumped out to me. I was just like, these colors are so rich and vibrant, and that sets a tone that they haven't tried yet. And sprinkled throughout the trailer is a bit of humor. I was born, I was brought to life by Zeus, and there's that long beat. Yeah,
well, that's neat.
Exactly. It's just really good timing.
That's one where unlike the Doctor Strange, it's sprinkled throughout. Right. So when they end on the joke with what's a secretary?
Yes.
Oh, I do this and do that. That's slavery. Oh, I like her.
Yeah.
It's okay because it doesn't jar with the rest of it because
Right.
You've already had that little bit of humor throughout. I'm curious though. It's going to be interesting. Like you said, she's very jaded by the time we see her in present day.
Right.
I'm doing air quotes on a podcast. It's like every podcaster does it. And so this film, like you said, is very hopeful. So are we going to see any of what happens, what brings her to that point in this film? Or is she going to be all hopeful for this film? And, are we going to have to fill in the blanks? Are they going to fill in the blanks with other films? And is that going to confuse people? If you've got, okay, here's her origin in World War One. Here she is in present day, whereas she's gruff and jaded and, lost a lot of her hope. I want to see those stories.
Yeah.
But is that going to confuse people when her next movie, now that takes place 50 years after the first one, but 40 years before the last one? Yeah.
Yeah, and I wonder if they will do time jumps or if they're just going to kind of end this new movie on a horrible moment of tragedy. Because we don't know, they didn't show anything, they didn't mention anything in Batman v Superman, and they haven't showed anything in the Justice League trailer. Like, do the Amazons still exist? Is it just her? And it's 100 years later, and, obviously the Steve Trevor character is not alive, but did he die young? Did he die horribly? Did something happen to him that kind of broke her spirit a little bit?
I wonder if we'll see a little bit, if they can do it. It'd be really powerful if they could pull together sort of the montage thing, where she's walking through time. She's going through time. She doesn't age, or she ages very slowly. She lives,
Right.
So long. And kind of see a montage of her experiencing war after war, death, friends, more death, war. Actually, the last few minutes of the film, I think if you do it right, you could actually tell 100 years of story in about 5 minutes of time. You could do it really easily. I've seen things done similar, I think, and I think they could definitely pull it off if they tried. And I think that would be very effective.
That would be a really good way to kind of just quickly bridge everything together, and it would be powerful, and you kind of see everything from her point of view, and you're just like, oh my gosh, she's so tragic. And
actually, maybe in the film in the modern time.
And I wouldn't doubt if they do that, and it would flow right into Justice League. Like, you could end it with the scene it's ending on is the scene it's picking up in Justice League. Right. And you're just sort of like, she went through all of that, and she still is, at least in appearance, a young person who has a lot of life ahead of her, and she's already dealt with several lifetimes worth of loss.
And Wonder Woman, just seconds before she shows up in Superman v. Batman, or Batman v. Superman, whichever one it was. Yeah, that'd be very cool. It'd be neat. That's the only thing that I saw that came out superhero-wise was this new series on FX, Legion, which is going to be an X-Men spinoff. Yeah. Again, one I knew nothing about until I saw this and read a little about it. This is apparently the son of Charles Xavier, is Legion, who may, according to the trailer, be the most powerful mutant that has ever been.
Yeah, I don't know much about it. I remember reading about it a couple of months ago. I didn't look that much into it. My only question is, does it tie into the movies, or is it standing on its own? You know, if the show kind of doesn't do well, will they just be like, hey, we got to get Wolverine in here just to kind of help with ratings a little bit?
Exactly.
You know, are they going to do that? Or is it just going to be like, no, it's its own separate thing. We're not going to bring in the actors that you know, and we're just going to try to let it stand on its own 2 feet and see if it can.
Well, yeah, my thought was if it's going to be the son of Xavier, then either Xavier doesn't know he has a son or something, or else why wouldn't he be around when this mutant starts? So is it going to be set in the future? Or how do they explain the fact that Charles Xavier isn't around trying to, obviously this kid would be setting off all kinds of alarms down in Cerebro. So you're going to have to explain where he's at. And so that'll be, it looks from the trailer, it's going to be almost kind of a surreal show. Apparently he is plagued with multiple personalities, and each of those personalities can exhibit a different mutant ability. Telekinesis, I had a long list of them, but
that's okay.
So it sounds like he could do just about anything, but he's driven mad by everything that's in his head. So like, wow, I don't know what story they're going to tell, but it sounds like it could tell just about any story they want.
Right, and it's one of those that kind of like, going back to what we're saying about the Netflix shows, it's very relatable. It's like, yeah, he's a superhero and he's got all of these powers that are fictional, but the problems he has are things that we can relate to, because it's mental health. We can relate to that. Like, he's being haunted by these different personalities and these things showing up. Like, yeah, we don't experience them like that, but we get what he's going through. And it's those more relatable stories that we like.
I think that's pretty much all that came out as far as film and television. There was a few stories about, like you said, Blue Beetle and Booster Gold. I think definitely Blue Beetle showing up in some games that are coming out. You're more of a gamer than I am, so you might know more about that. Do you know anything?
That was the Injustice 2 video game.
Yeah.
I played that game. That was a lot of fun. It was more of a. It was done by I want to say it's NetherRealms, the company that does Mortal Kombat. And it was very much a fighting game like that, but it was more the story that pulled me in, because it was like a really long movie that you had to play through to unfold, because you'd play a little bit and then they'd give you a cutscene, then you'd play a little bit and they'd give you a cutscene. It was very interesting. And then the comic book came out, because it opens, something happens in the game and then it cuts 5 years later, and the comic book bridges those 5 years. So for me, it's been a really interesting story, and so this game we're picking it back up after where the first game ended. And they're bringing in all of these characters that weren't in the last one, and it's just cool to see them, because they're lesser known, and they're more fun because they're lesser known, and they're more open to do things, and they're not set in stone of what they need to be.
And I think I just had another idea, and I was just going to mention it, but you know what? That's the same kind of thing I'm going to wait for when we talk about the future of television. We're going to talk about how games are now becoming part of the mainstream, part of the storytelling device. That's definitely going to be an upcoming discussion. But I think that's going to be it. I think that's covered everything. Is there anything else that came out that really piqued your interest, superhero-wise or other?
Superhero-wise, not terribly. I didn't follow it like super strict. I was just sort of catching things on certain sites that I follow, and that was it. Those movies, those shows, and it's more of a we haven't hit the implosion yet, so let's just keep going forward.
Exactly. But the only other thing that came out that piqued my interest at all was the trailer for the new King Kong film, Skull Island, which looks where I might have been a little, I don't know, King Kong, whatever. This one, it piqued my interest, like you said. It's got me interested to see it, because this is going to be, they have announced that they are going to do a Godzilla versus King Kong film. And so this is the film that kind of will get that going. So, big Godzilla fan. So, there's something that came out of it I think was definitely talked about was the new Godzilla film.
Yeah.
Not a fan of the look of the Godzilla.
He's very toothy.
Very toothy, very odd bodied, very different than anything we've seen before. So I'm not a fan of the look of Godzilla, but I'm a fan of the look of the film.
And I wonder if those changes to the look, if a studio feels pressure of doing that, of, well, we need to make this our Godzilla. And they've done so many versions already that we're just like, all right, let's just go weird with it.
Yeah.
Like half his face is filled with teeth.
Right. Yeah, and this is the Toho. This is Toho doing this particular Godzilla. So we're going to have lots of Godzilla coming out, because there's still going to be an American sequel as well. So as a Godzilla fan, squee. So yeah, really exciting. I'm not a fan of the look, but I like what I saw in the trailer, so I'm willing to give it a shot for sure. And they did announce that we are going to see it here in the States. It's going to be coming out here real soon in Japan, and I think end of the year, end of 2016, we'll see it here in the theaters. So yeah, exciting, good news.
Wonderful.
That is going to do it, Matt. Thank you very much. This has been awesome. This went amazingly well, and everything's still recording. We didn't have any technical difficulties. I forgot to unplug the phone, and it didn't ring, so I'm really awesome. So until next time, thanks everyone for downloading this. I'm going to go ahead and call this the inaugural episode of Time Shifters here, and hopefully we'll have some more stuff. I'm going to have Matt back as often as I can get him. I think I'm going to try to pull in a few other people as well, some in studio, some over the Skype, just as the different topics come up. That I want to surround myself, wherever I'm lacking, I'm going to surround myself with someone that knows more than I do.
That's a good plan.
Yeah. And we'll keep it coming your way. So thank you very much, and guess where to find us. Go to timeshifterspodcast.com, and of course download right from iTunes. So that's it. Well, thanks very much. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Bye, everyone.